While getting background shots for my recent video about Ogden Union Station, I had the chance to ride the new OGX service, which is a branded bus line from the Ogden Intermodal Station through downtown, up to Weber State University and its sports venues, and then over to the McCady Hospital. I say branded bus line because, despite the fact that OGX is supposed to stand for Ogden Express, and that it was designed and still is billed as bus rapid transit, I was not left with the impression of speed. The facts bear me out on this, since even the published schedules show that OGX is not significantly faster than the local bus service it replaced. And understand, I speak from a place of affection, since I worked on the design and modeling team for the Harrison Boulevard segment. This is the part of the project most like a conventional bus rapid transit line, where bus-only lanes feed directly into median stations and give the system the feel of a light rail line. The major difference between those lines and this one is that bikes go on the outside of these buses, and every station includes a bicycle step-down area like this one here. But all other wheeled users are welcome to roll right in with a level boarding. Also, because the buses have doors on only the right side, these two stations require buses to switch sides at the median platforms, which was a lot of fun to design, and, like the skewed platform at the BYU South Campus UVX station in Provo, is a good example of how my engineering firm was able to creatively improve on the preliminary design. Overall, even though the bus-only lanes make up less than a quarter of the line, there are clever efficiencies throughout this route. I really like the southbound station at Washington Boulevard and 25th Street, specifically how it is built into the middle of the road so that buses can slip straight into the left turn lane without fighting traffic. The highlight of this route is the Weber State section, where the buses go right up to the front door of the Performing Arts Building. It is really unusual to see full-sized buses traversing such a highly pedestrianized space, and it is even more impressive to see what was demolished to make way for the new bus-only road straight through campus. Compare that to my alma mater, BYU, which not only relocated a heavily used transit station 3 blocks farther from the Student Union building, but also closed and demolished an entire road just to keep the UVX line relegated to the outer boundaries of campus. Even the University of Utah oddly keeps its transit lines out around the peripheries, and UVU plans to do the same whenever UVX Phase 2 happens. This makes Weber State University, by default, the friendliest university for transit in Utah, and I think there's a lot to talk about here. Now, sending large 40-foot buses down what used to be sidewalks does come with trade-offs. Several spaces were so narrow that only one bus lane could be constructed, meaning buses need to wait at signalized pullouts for opposing buses to pass through, as though they were trains on a single track. It is also not a fast section, with drivers needing to keep a constant lookout for careless students who may disregard the rows of bollards and step out in front of the buses. This section of the route is scheduled to run at an average speed of 13 miles per hour, which is the same average speed as the S-Line streetcar, a line famous for how not fast it is. In fact, the original planning for this line assumed it would become a streetcar, and the choice of chimes, station spacing, and urban integration still feel very much like holdovers from that original idea. And it isn't just the Weber State section either, as end-to-end, the entire route takes half an hour, between endpoints that a car can reach in about 12 minutes, and which a cyclist can do in 25. One of the more frustrating reasons for the slower speed is that even though traffic gets more or less congested throughout the day, the buses keep a convenient clock-face schedule and run at the same speeds late at night as they do during rush hour. The frustration comes when buses arrive at a station early, then sit and wait for their scheduled departure time, which has been slowed to allow for the worst-case traffic scenario, even when the buses are the only other vehicles on the road. This is most noticeable in downtown Ogden, where buses must navigate popular streets, such as 22nd Street and Washington Boulevard. The upside is that, by plunging directly into Ogden's most pedestrianized areas, OGX is able to solve many of its own last-mile problems. It is a well-understood phenomenon that transit ridership suffers when passengers must walk through a parking lot in order to reach their destinations. It just adds insult to injury that drivers can get right up to the front door, but people who are trying to do good by taking transit must hike in past rows of parked cars. Good station placement extends throughout the OGX route, and is one of the major reasons that the line has already built such a high ridership, with UTA needing to purchase more buses only months after opening in order to keep up with demand. And with all the starting and stopping involved in running in mixed traffic, going straight up and down steep hills, and the need to accelerate into gaps in the traffic, UTA and their partners absolutely made the right choice by going with battery electric buses. These buses charge for 10 to 15 minutes at the end of each run from this overhead apparatus, and just listen to how quiet they are. Electric buses also incur smaller fuel and maintenance costs, allowing UTA to run them more frequently than typical bus routes. The full route sees a bus in each direction every 10 minutes, while the section through Weber State doubles that with a special shuttle service, which is one of the main reasons the university was such a willing partner in the project all along. For many years, the basketball stadium and other sports facilities were separated from the main campus by a residential neighborhood, and part of the OGX project involved cutting a corridor through these homes for buses, service vehicles, and a wide pedestrian walkway. This connection will become a critical link in the university's future expansion plans, and is just one of the many mitigations that OGX and similar transit projects must play along with in order to build partnerships. UVX in Provo was notorious for trade-offs like this, most notably on University Parkway, where space in the median was only granted from UDOT if the project also expanded the parkway from 2 general travel lanes in each direction to 3. This means that, in addition to the bus lane, the right turn lane, and the dual left turn lanes, transit riders must traverse 7 lanes in order to reach the station in the median of the road. While OGX did not need to add more general lanes in exchange for new bus lanes on Harrison Boulevard, we on the design team did need to widen the sidewalks, add bike lanes, and reconstruct dozens and dozens of driveways, retaining walls, and business accesses as the road spilled past its original right-of-way. The formerly straight road now twists back and forth as we had to decide which front yards to take and which to leave alone. A new curb in the median of the road was needed to keep drivers from using the new bus-only lanes as left turn lanes for local businesses, but at one point, the lanes pass in front of a fire station, where emergency vehicles need to cross the barrier in order to respond quickly to emergencies. A compromise was reached of a lower, traversable curb and plastic delineators to keep ordinary drivers out. I could go on and on with stories about the discussions and decisions that influenced the final design of Harrison Boulevard, but the important part is that it took our design team of engineers around 2 years of research, coordination, and design work to finally arrive at a design that met all the project requirements. And all that effort for a segment of road that is less than a mile long. Don't get me wrong, OGX and UVX are incredible transit systems that earn their place on UTA's fixed guideway maps. They deliver a quality travel experience with mostly well-placed and well-established stations, and are able to function even when car lanes beside them are congested to failing, such as during sporting events. These are good transit lines, and we ought to build more of them. But they also come with high costs, and not only financial ones. The wider roads, lost housing, and complicated street designs all mean that building new bus-only lanes is a slow and deliberate exercise, and it doesn't surprise me that so many new quote-unquote BRT lines are being proposed and built with only the most minimal exclusive right-of-way. None of this is meant to diminish the importance of bus-oriented infrastructure, which I believe should rightly be considered separately. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need to come up with some specialty branding to update only a few of our best-performing bus lines. Rather, ideally, we would rebuild all our bus stops to include level boarding, good shelters, maps and information, and good neighborhood integration. Exclusive lanes are an effective tool to speed up transit times through congested areas, but, as OGX shows, there are many congested areas where buses should go slower and stop more often. Exclusive lanes are not needed everywhere, and that is the real beauty of bus lines. Their flexibility means they can succeed at all levels of investment, from a local bus running in mixed traffic to an express bus on an exclusive busway. One of the best compromise solutions I've seen, and used on a few BRT lines I've helped design, is called a BAT lane, standing for Bus and Turn Lane. Private vehicles that need to turn right are allowed to enter the bus lane, but only buses are allowed to travel in the lane for an entire block. Ideally, these take the place of on-street parking, so that no extra widening is needed to create a bus priority corridor through the most congested portions of a bus's route. Salt Lake City recently installed BAT lanes on the 200 South corridor, along with an upgraded cycle lane. The floating bus stops leave room for improvement compared to Ogden's OGX stations, but there's no reason why these couldn't be improved in the future. If long BAT lanes are not possible, then shorter lanes, combined with a priority signal, can help buses skip traffic without expensive roadway widening. Buses enter the right turn lane, then move to the front as cars ahead of them turn right on red. Then, before through traffic receives a green light, the bus is given a clear signal 2 to 5 seconds early, allowing the bus to pull ahead of traffic without having to wait for clear openings. These are the kinds of projects that don't get very many people excited, but, when done well and en masse, their cumulative efforts can add up. Across all transit agencies in all cities around the world, one consistent trait is that, no matter how much ridership the rail systems get, the majority of a system's ridership comes from the humble bus. And my opinion is that more ought to be done to improve this segment of ridership. I know it is popular in transit advocacy circles to prefer new rail lines for expanded service, and to roll our eyes anytime buses are identified as a preferred solution. Because buses are so flexible and can operate with only a sign and a curb, that is often all the funding they get. Meanwhile, rail lines get complete stations by default, since those are considered necessary amenities. This leads to a confusion that people want rail transit rather than that they want good transit. Another point of confusion is cost effectiveness. By far, the most costly component of any transit system is the human operators, who need to be trained, paid a living wage, given expensive benefits, and hired in sufficient numbers so that there are always people held in reserve in order to avoid staffing shortages. The natural response has been to increase the vehicle size so that the cost per passenger decreases. Each and every bus must be staffed by its own operator, meaning the only way to increase efficiency is by buying larger buses. But rail vehicles can be coupled into trains, meaning one operator can now move hundreds of people at once, thus spreading the staffing costs out over that many passengers. But this paradigm seems on the cusp of being upended. It should be clear to everyone by now that the day is coming when computers will become capable of taking over all the functions of vehicle operation, making cars, trucks, buses, and trains capable of self-driving. And when that day arrives, the trend towards cost-effectiveness will be completely turned on its head. Larger, mechanically unique vehicles will be less cost-effective than fleets of smaller, van-sized vehicles able to enter and exit service as demand rises and falls. Routes that stop at every single station can be replaced by completely flexible routes based on where specific passengers need to go. Clock-face schedules can be replaced by on-demand services that coordinate your departure and destination with requests made in smartphone apps. The line between ride-sharing and transit will become extremely blurry, and with costs reduced and ridership up, perhaps the private sector will become involved in ways not seen since private bus and streetcar companies were bought up by local governments generations ago. Certain high-capacity bus lines, or at least segments of them, will probably continue to operate as they do today, albeit with a much higher and more flexible frequency. But I anticipate these will also be augmented by direct services and feeder branches that would never make financial sense today. All of this is speculation, of course, but it is speculation that is based on undeniable current trends. And taken together, they suggest to me that wider roads and bus-only lanes will have limited utility in our cities of the future, except in a very narrow set of circumstances. On the other hand, many other aspects of good transit, such as well-established stations and organic neighborhood integration, will continue to be extremely important. My suggestion to the planners of today is to focus our investments on these things, so that buses, transit, and sustainable transportation will be ready when the impending revolution finally dawns. I'm Christian Lenhart. Thank you for watching.